What would we do if we ruled the world? That's the title of today's lesson. But I don't know, I thought I put it there. It is. There's my picture for today's joke. So, there were two elderly ladies that were driving. Yes, go ahead and turn it on.
Thank you.
Hello, Facebook friends. Forgot to say hello. All right, we had a good presentation from Dr. Barbara about our new campus. So if you want to see more about that, just holler at the church and we'll give it to you somehow, some way. But today's joke is there were two elderly ladies driving down the highway, or down the road, and Vivian was the passenger and Ann was the driver. And they came to this intersection with stoplights, and Vivian was paying attention, and it seemed like they ran right through a red light. And Vivian was thinking to herself inside her head, I thought we just ran through a red light. Am I losing it? Surely Ann wouldn't have ran through the red light. And so they come to another intersection and another red light, and they go right through it. And Vivian thinks, oh my, I must really be losing it. I knew I was old, but my goodness. And so they come to this third intersection and another red light, and they run right through it. And Vivian says, now I know that was a red light, and so I'm not losing it. So she turns to Ann and says, Ann, did you know that we ran 3 red lights at those intersections and we could have been killed? And Ann looks at her and she says, oh, am I driving? So that was a good picture for that, wasn't it? The older we go, hopefully we can appreciate more of those jokes. So, unusual thing today is I'm starting with a Bible quote, yet it's okay. There was something else I was going to say, and now I've forgotten. So, kind of that goes with that joke, doesn't it? I'll remember in the middle of the lesson. But anyway, I want to start with these verses from Matthew, because it comes from a revealing word definition. And it says that Jesus called them to him and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. It will not be so among you, but whosoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant. And whosoever wishes to be the first among you must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many. So, you probably may have heard that before, may have not. But I have this is the idea that came from, and it's under Rulership in the Revealing Word, which is a book from Charles Fillmore that has a bunch of definitions in it. And so it says rulership. In personal rulership, the great ones exercise authority. He who rules lords it over his subjects. Okay? You got that part? And these are two different things. In spiritual rulership, he who serves best is greatest and is ruler through true merit. And then there's the Bible quote. So, think about the difference between those two, okay? Because if you read it the first time, you might think that, well, both of them are cool, I think. At least, okay, this is how I read it. The first time I thought, well, okay, both of them are cool. But then you read that Bible quote, and it's kind of like, okay, we're back to some old language here, first of all. This is a newer old language, but it's still old language. And it's talking about a servant and a slave and all that stuff. So it kind of gives us a little bit more insight into this. And it lets you know that the personal rulership and the spiritual rulership are quite different. This is still on the old language and what they're talking about in that passage. And even though this is in that passage also, in the latter part, it's not as clear as this if you read it. In spiritual rulership, he who serves best is greatest and is ruler through true merit. Which means what? Through their acts and deeds, right? And so how we live our life is how Fillmore describes spiritual rulership. So what would, though, this is the question I've got for you. What would the world look like if you were in charge? And of course I get the nice gifs that Francie puts in there, so this was nice. Wow. I'm not sure what those things are, but... Energy. Okay, cool. See these ideas come out? And all those have to be combined to do it. So what would the world look like? This is not a rhetorical question. I want you to think of the idea in your head, but also I want some responses. What would the world look like if you were in charge? Don't be feared. Don't be afeared.
A nicer place.
A nicer place.
There would be no cruelty.
There would be no cruelty.
There'd be no boundaries between countries and states.
There would be no boundaries between countries and states.
Peaceful.
Peaceful. Okay.
Equality.
What's that?
Love.
Love, equality. I'm glad you're here, dear. I love you too.
I would immediately abdicate and make it a democracy.
There you go.
Have a lot of parties.
Have a lot of parties. Now we're getting to the nitty gritty, aren't we?
Yeah.
That's right. Well, good. Those are your ideas. Now, what does the world look like today to you? That picture you just saw? Well,
Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it depends on how you look at that picture too, doesn't it? So, what does the world look like to you today?
Loving.
Loving.
It's a beautiful place.
It's a beautiful place. Come on now.
Trying to work together.
Chaos. There's
Trying to work
together. Okay.
A lot of need for physical and spiritual advancement.
A lot of need for physical and spiritual advancement. So all those things. See, I'm sorry.
Injustice.
Injustice.
Cruelty.
Okay. This is good. I'm liking the honest answers, and I think all of them are honest. But you know, when we look at the world today, prejudice. Okay.
Good.
When we look at the world today, it sometimes is different than what would the world look like if we were in charge, right? And we're going to learn, hopefully, today, of what those two mean to each other. Okay? Because it's extremely important that they are the same thing, believe it or not. So what would we have to change in our own life to make the two coincide or agree with each other? That's what we're going to get to. Change your attitude. Yeah. That's true.
Watching the news.
Quit watching it.
Yeah.
That's what it takes for some people, doesn't it?
Or not letting what you see on the news affect
Or not
your
letting.
consciousness.
Open our minds.
Just be loving.
Open our hearts.
Open minds and hearts, be loving. You got something behind that? Wow.
I didn't want to
President.
take like a perceptual shift.
Perceptional shift.
Yeah.
What somebody else say?
Just see it the way you believe it to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. What did somebody else say?
A new president.
A new president. Okay, that's pretty specific.
That's a good one.
Okay, so to have them coincide, though, I knew that was going to come out by somebody. I didn't care who. All right, let's talk about this first. I'm going to get to this after the song because they got a good song that they're going to play. But regeneration is what you've heard me talk about before. It's one of Fillmore's. If you've been in Unity for a long time, you'll hear about regeneration. You know about regeneration, and most people put regeneration on the physical idea, which is part of it. But we're going to look at it from the spiritual idea. Okay, so regeneration is from a physical sense. Is that if I learn enough about my true self, my spiritual self, then I can regenerate like the body does every 7 years. Regenerate to a point where I'll never die. That was one of Fillmore's ideas, believe it or not. And so that's one that most people know about when they talk about regeneration. But regeneration from a spiritual sense is a little bit different. It's not really different. It's better, if you ask me. But anyway, let's read. A change in which abundant spiritual life, even eternal life, is incorporated into the body. Okay, now that's the physical sense. All right, the transformation that takes place through bringing all the forces of mind and body to the support of the Christ ideal. The unification of spirit, soul, and body in spiritual oneness. Okay, so that's all still kind of a physical sense. But he goes on, and this is the part that most people don't really, they kind of glaze over because they're kind of, after this part, they're kind of like, okay, that'll take me 3 months to figure out. And then after that, they're tired of regeneration. But anyway, it goes on to say, regeneration begins its work in the conscious mind, which is our conscious mind, okay? Now remember, it's kind of confusing, really, at times when you talk about Fillmore because of his use of words, the same words sometimes, in different areas, okay? And we're not talking about consciousness. When we say consciousness, usually we're talking about the race consciousness, meaning all human race consciousness, okay? The collective consciousness. That's what we're usually talking about, okay? But when we talk about, when he's talking about consciousness here, or conscious here, he's talking about just the human individual mind, okay? Regeneration begins its work in the conscious mind and completes it in the subconsciousness. Okay, now if you remember how this goes, it's superconsciousness, which is my divine ideas, my direct connection with God, subconsciousness, and then consciousness, okay? Now, on psychologically, you'll have the conscious and subconscious mind, right? And so I'm sure everybody here knows what the subconscious is. It's all our experiences and how we've interpreted them and how we've placed those thoughts in our subconscious mind, right? And so when something happens in our life that brings up one of those subconscious embedded thoughts, it makes us think that that is what's happening. What we already have the thought on. Do you follow me? Like if, okay. Trying to think if that would be a good example. Okay, well, this isn't a good example. I'm going to use it anyway. I'm going to use it two different ways. I have always been a big John Wayne fan. In fact, does everybody know who John Wayne is, first of all? Listen, we laugh. And I was in a Spanish class in college in, I think, 2004, and the assignment was to write about one of your heroes and why they were your hero. You had to do it in Spanish, of course. And I used John Wayne. And of course, I was the oldest one in the class, of course. And this guy stood up and said, "Who the heck is John Wayne?" And I felt like, oh, well, no. But anyway, so he didn't know who John Wayne was. But anyway, John Wayne, I've always liked John Wayne. In fact, we had during what did I go to? Seminary. During seminary, you're required to have, before you get into seminary, you have to have a psychological eval. But during seminary, you have to have counseling throughout with a psychologist, okay? So I was getting re-evaluated, I guess, by the psychologist, and she came up without me saying anything, "You have a John Wayne complex." And so I said, "What the heck is that?" I mean, I kind of like it, but what is it? No. She said that, and she said, "Well, it's not always good. It isn't really a good thing. It's because sometimes you think about things in that perspective. There's a good guy and there's a bad guy, right? Because all John Wayne movies, what? He was the white hat guy, right? The good guy. So anyway, there's not always, though, a good guy and a bad guy in life, is there? I mean, we may perceive it as such, yet usually what it is what? Two people that have different perspectives about the same thing, right? And who's the good guy in our thought? The guy we agree with, right? And by golly, if you don't agree with that, what's your problem? You're a bad guy. You're wearing a black hat, right? Okay, so John Wayne complex. Before seminary, well before that, I was working at Coca-Cola. And I used to drive a truck for them. And every day you'd have to come in and fill out these reports. Well, I wanted to get the reports done, as soon as I got in, because those were long days. So I came in and was filling out a report. I know I've told this story to some of you all before, but I was filling out the report it was a pretty one of the pretty large rooms, and I was at the end of it, filling out a report, and I think I was by myself there. I was filling out the report, and somebody, I didn't even know he came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Come on." And so at this Coca-Cola plant, it was pretty rowdy. We always had, jokesters, and they would always trick with us and stuff. And so I said, I was really into my report trying to get it done. I said, "Don't bother me right now. I want to get this done, and I'll come." And he tapped harder and said, "Okay, there goes my mic," because it was red when I started. Hold on a second. I don't know what happened. It's red. It was red again. We changed these batteries last week. Change them again. Sorry for the time delay. You people on Facebook, just do what you're doing. Okay, now we have a green light. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Okay, so I was filling out this report, and I was wanting to get it done, and he tapped me on the shoulder harder and said, "Come on with me now." And so, you know, I turned around and saw the barrel of this gun sticking right in my face. And so, you know, I was totally caught off guard. And so I just set up, you know, and I was the only one, him and I were the only ones in the room. And he and his partner, there were two of them, but the other partner wasn't there yet. They had these clown outfits on, you know. And so you couldn't tell who it was, what they were, or whatever. But anyway, you knew it was a male, that's about it. Anyway, so they took us all in this room and had us all lay on the ground. This was a smaller office. There's probably only about 6 of us there at that time, because drivers came in at different times and all that. But anyway, we all got into this office and laid on the ground. Well, the second dude came in, and he was the mean one. I was glad I got caught by the guy. So we're in this room, and it was a busy place. The phone rang all the time and everything. So the phone went off, and the mean guy whacked that phone off the table, off the desk. And so I figured he knew meant business, or both of them did. And opposite of what John Wayne would do, I crawled under that desk as fast as I could. Sometimes what we think about what we can do at a certain time, although it would have been stupid to try to resist because they had guns that were drawn and we didn't have weapons, we're not going to do what we think we're going to do. And I think coming to a realization of that, no matter what happens in our life, we can look at some things in life. Well, this is the person I agree with, and this is the person I don't agree with on this situation, on this idea. Look at that in a different light. Instead of saying they're wrong and they're right, we can look at it and say, that's a different opinion that maybe I haven't either looked at, or that's their opinion. It doesn't have to be the wrong opinion. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be the wrong opinion just because it's different than ours. Right?
Right.
Okay. So, back to this. The first step to doing this, to get those subconscious ideas into right perspective, is, what would you say in that example? Or the little bit of an example I gave you. First of all, if we always, and I've said this numerous times, if we could always see each other and see the Christ within each other, we're never going to hurt anybody, are we? We're never going to say, really, they're wrong, because we'll realize as a collective, we're all that. I mean, we can't, I don't know about you, but over my years on this planet, I have changed my mind on a couple of things. In fact, I used to be really, really strong on some things that I've totally changed my mind on. One of them I know you can relate to, and I've said before, is when I didn't have kids, and this was in Kansas, and I'm sure almost every state in the union probably has had this. There was some legislation going through the legislature saying, you know what we need to do? We're having some problems with some kids, and we need to start, since we can't really do nothing to the juveniles, we need to start holding those parents accountable. And I said, what a great idea! But when I became a parent, I said, what a stupid idea! Follow me? Yeah, that changed a lot. The first step in cleansing is denying the error thoughts, which will renounce them, which is renouncing them. Let's just read what it says. The first step is cleansing or denial, in which all error thoughts are renounced. Now, we may not think it's an error thought in our subconsciousness, but when something comes up, when we are experiencing a new thing in life, which is every second of every day, right? And we have a thought come up in our mind that says, you know what? This reminds me of something, even though I don't remember what exactly it reminds me of, but I'm getting a certain feeling from this experience. We need to just step back and say, hey, wait. This is a new experience. Let me have this new experience and see what it's like. That's kind of like denying, that's kind of getting rid of that old embedded thought. This includes forgiveness for sins committed and a general clearing of the whole consciousness, which it does, because you won't have that in the subconsciousness when something comes up. It reminds you of something that has happened in your life in a present moment deal. What is that? That's in your conscious, right? So you have to deal with it then. So it clears out the whole conscious. Now, what I said before on the superconsciousness, that is something that, hey, if we all lived by that, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? After the way has been prepared, the second step takes place. This is the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. So I think we've got a song now. Oh man, I put it in there. I can't believe I did that. Francie did it, and it's not this song, but it is a different song. So I want Leslie and Will to play.
You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand, and I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed, and you won't start now. So I will call upon your name,
cool to be in tune. You know, Will and Leslie and I and the whole ministry team is getting more and more in tune because Will and Leslie are still newer. Get in tune and be able to figure out what kind of music we're talking